Thinking about moving to Navarre, Florida, but the thought of hurricanes gives you anxiety? Well, hang on to your flip-flops because today I'm going to go over everything you actually need to know in order to understand hurricanes before you make Navarre, Florida your home. Hey guys, it's Kristen, your Navarre, Florida real estate agent, and today we're going to talk about hurricanes. I'm going to go over some facts, some misconceptions, some tips on things to look for when you're purchasing your first home here in Florida, and just kind of go over everything to kind of give you a little bit ease of mind when you're thinking about hurricanes. But make sure you wait to the end because I have a bonus for you of my favorite weather guy that's local here that talks to you straight and there's no BS with it. So make sure you stick around to the end. Okay, so first let's just go over the facts. So hurricane season starts June 1st and goes all the way through November. In our area, the busier or most active time is typically like June through like September. But having said that, don't be complacent about it and only think that the hurricanes happen then, because they can happen early on and they can happen all the way up until November. So kind of make sure you're kind of aware, but you don't have to get crazy about it, tracking everything until those couple months. Hurricanes start as a wave coming off of Africa, and they're in the water for a really long time. So you can keep track of them weeks in advance before we even are anywhere near us. Having said that, they can start up in the Gulf. Typically when that happens, it's a remnant of another storm that died down and maybe got to warmer water, but they can start anywhere, but typically it's off the coast of Africa. So they're rated in category system from 1 to 5. 1 is the weakest, 5 is the strongest. In our area, we have seen some 5s. We've seen some really strong 3s that were almost 4s. So I'm going to kind of cheat and look at my notes so I can remember the exact dates. But Dennis and Ivan were in 2004 and 2005. They hit landfall as a 3, but they were a very strong 3. Then we had Opal in 1995. That was a category 4. Hurricane Michael, obviously in 2018, hit the Panama City area, and that was a 5 and was catastrophic. Like that. It was coming kind of towards us, and then it shifted at the last minute, but it also gained incredible speed and it was huge. So that was a completely disastrous storm. And then most recently in 2020, we had Sally, which was only a category 2, but the amount of rainfall that we had just devastated so much homes with flooding and everything else. So with hurricanes, yes, it's a windstorm. But it can, if it just sits like Hurricane Harvey in Texas, if it just sits there and just pours down rain, it can be really damaging in that respect as well. So before I keep going, I would love to hear your thoughts on hurricanes. Do they scare you? Do they interest you? Because they are kind of fascinating. So comment down below on what your thoughts are for hurricanes. Okay, so now let's talk about some misconceptions. So I'm from the Midwest where, when we have tornado season, we get them a lot. Like they spin up, like we know when it's going to kind of be the prime weather for those things, and they spin up quite a bit. That's not the case for hurricane season. We go, it's all of spring and fall basically. So a good 5 months, whatever that is, June through November. And it's sometimes we can have, just only a couple of named storms. Sometimes we can get 10 named storms. They use the alphabet when they're naming the storms. So, we can go weeks and weeks without anything, or we can have a couple all in 1 week. So it is not the same as tornado season, but it is still a season, if you will, that you just kind of have to stay alert. So another thing is, another misconception is that you have to evacuate for every single hurricane. And that's just not the case. So for my family, we have decided that at a category 3, we would evacuate, take the dogs, take the kids, and our most precious valuables that we don't want to, get ruined or whatever. And we will evacuate. Now, there are certain times, depending on where, like if you live along the water or if you live in an evacuation zone, and depending on what category it is, some of the officials will mandate that you evacuate. But as a general rule, you don't have to evacuate for every single hurricane. There are people that the minute it hits hurricane status that they leave. It's all dependent on like what everyone's comfortable with. So the next misconception is basically how much time that we actually have before the hurricane is coming to us. So again, for the Midwest, we know maybe it'll be a good day for tornadoes, or like a time that the weather is just right that we can expect some. But with, so we only get maybe minutes or seconds before a tornado forms and touches down, and obviously can be super catastrophic. But with hurricanes, we get so much notice. I mean, weeks in advance, especially now with all of the, weather systems and things like that, and the technology that we have so much advanced notice that they can track where they think it's going to go, or where the high likelihood, if it's where it's going to go, to plan for it. They can kick up tornadoes, things like that as well. But once we know it's coming, you can kind of get ready for it. And again, we have weeks to know that. But a fun fact, most of our area does not have tornado sirens, even though we can get tornadoes. In fact, tonight we're supposed to have some storms coming through that might give us some tornadoes, but we don't have tornado sirens here. A lot of people think that we would, and we do not. Some of the bases do, but regular like areas like Navarre and just in general, we don't. Okay, so next, let's talk about preparation. Just like I said, we do have so much time in advance before we know a storm is coming, but the best time to prepare is when you don't have to prepare at all. So before hurricane season even starts, that's when you should start getting a list of things that you think you might need for all of your family members, including your pets, so that you're prepared the minute you need your things. So something a lot of people don't think about are the outside preparations. So looking at your trees and seeing if there's any, like if a hurricane's coming, or if you are, it's like I said, if it's before the hurricane season and you've got some trees that maybe are not in great shape, or, had hit some storms from like just regular storms, or, if we had some windy winters, things like that, take down those limbs that you think might be a problem down the road. Or if you've got a dead tree, make sure you take those down, that kind of stuff, just to prepare yourself so that if a storm does come through, you don't have a downed tree into your home or into a power line or things like that. Something that's always really crazy to me, when after Michael hit, I had a client that they were buying in Panama City. So I went out there, and it was crazy how these tall pine trees, hundreds of years old, they're like the top quarter of them all just kind of were bent like this. The weirdest thing. And it was just because of the wind, how, the storm itself goes in the same direction. It just bopped everything over. When we first moved here back in 2006, it had just been after Dennis and Ivan, and the same thing. And I didn't think anything of it because I'm like, what the heck's going on? But it was because of the storms. They just kind of just take off the tops of the trees. And it's just really weird. But that's something, again, that's just, a healthy tree. But if you've got some trees on your property that maybe are damaged or maybe aren't healthy or dying, just take them down before the season even starts, so you don't have to worry about it. All right, so back on track here. So windows, if you bought a home that does not have hurricane shutters or any kind of protection for your windows before hurricane season starts, is the time to get it done. Whether you're doing, just the wood boards, or if you're kind of go the better route, which is doing the shield for your windows or the metal corrugated type look, whatever. Getting those before hurricane season is always the better bet, because you're not in a rush. You can plan it all out. If you're doing the boards, that is, you can measure everything out, label it all, put it in your garage or shed, and have it all ready to go. Get your clips and everything ready. But all of those things, again, since you're not being rushed, you can plan it out and make it a little bit more organized. But definitely want to know that you have those things ready to go if you need them. And also keep in mind that if you do have those protection for all of your windows, including any windows in your garage door and any windows on your front and back doors, that you can get a deduction on your home insurance. So if you purchased a house that didn't have those things, and now that you have them, you can always get a 4-point inspection done. It's going to cost you a little bit of money, but you can get that done, showing that you have all of the coverage now for your openings, and then send that into your insurance so that they can give you a little deduction. Another good thing to prepare is your documents. So you should have a little folder that is something you can just grab and go if you need to. Again, you're going to have time to prepare all these things, but better to prepare it now and have it somewhere where you can just grab it and load up the car. But any home documents that you have, whether it's in your homeowner's insurance, it's always something to keep in mind. Any title documents or closing documents that you have, so you can show that the property is yours. Because we might not have internet, we might not have electric right now, and those types of things. So you want to have the hard copies just in case, because during some of these storms, you can only get here if you can prove that you live here. So if your address isn't correct on your driver's license, you're going to need those other documents. But any marriage certificate, birth certificate, your social security cards, passports, things like that, keep them all in one spot so that you can always take them with you. Or the easiest thing to do is to get a smaller safe deposit box, or a safe that you can just pick up and take with you so that everything's already in there. One thing to keep in mind is not to forget your pet records. If you are evacuating and you're going to a hotel, or maybe you're going to like an extended stay place, sometimes they require records that your dog and cat or whatever else you have are vaccinated. So make sure that you keep those records with you as well so that you can go to the hotel, or if you need to board them when you get there, whatever, you're going to need those documents, because again, if you're evacuating, chances are good that the vet is also evacuated, so there's nobody there that you can contact. So having those on hand are always helpful. Okay, so hurricane kits. So I personally would not buy the ones that they sell in the store. If that's the easiest thing for you, and if something's better than nothing, then go for it. But I personally would just make my own. I have a tote. We've done this already. We have a tote. We've got some tarps in there. We've got some ponchos in there. We've got glow sticks, flashlights, batteries, battery-powered fans. We used to keep different food things in there as well, but now we've got a different option for that. But anything that you can get you through the first 72 hours. That's kind of what the emergency people say is the first 72 are on you. So don't rely on Red Cross or FEMA or anybody to be there for you for those first few days, because it's just not going to be there. So keep the enough stuff on hand for yourself. Like you have to think, if there's a hole in my roof, what do I need to make sure that we're staying dry if it's raining or whatever. Sunscreen's another good one. First aid kits. Obviously, you're in your house, but if you keep all that stuff together, just something that's just easier to keep all in one spot. But even masks, because sometimes if there's a gas leak or if there's some sewage leak or something else, having something to cover so that you don't smell it, all those kinds of things. Gloves are really big, both like gardening gloves and like surgical gloves in case somebody gets hurt and you need to help them out, those kinds of things. Battery packs. In addition to batteries, so you can charge your phone. But all of those things, put them in a big tote, put hurricane kit on it, and put it in your garage. And then at the beginning of the season, make sure everything's charged. When our kids were little, one thing that we did that we put into our big hurricane kit was coloring books that they didn't ever have before, some small games or puzzles that I would get from the Dollar Tree, because the first couple of days it's fun, we're eating by candlelight, or, we had the little flashlights like on the headband thing, and the kids thought that was funny. But on day 3 and 4, when they don't have a tablet or they don't have, internet to watch their shows or whatever else, it starts to get a little hairy. So have some fun, cheap games that you can pull out and be like, oh, let's play this. You guys have never played it before. It'll keep them occupied for at least a little while. The next thing is a weather radio. So yes, we have our phones, and it's great, but we don't always get service during these times. So having that weather radio that's either battery powered or solar powered, where you can like crank it, so at least you can hear what's going on, is always a good thing. And generally they're pretty cheap. But on top of that also is getting a weather radio that has different signals that you just use, like not necessarily after the hurricane, but before the hurricane. So we have one, it was like $20. But you can program it to your different area, like city even, and county, and then you can have it go off for flood watches, for tornado warnings, for thunderstorm warnings, for hurricane warnings, like all that stuff. So it's kind of nice because in the middle of the night, sometimes now, if there's a tornado warning, it'll go off and we'll hear it. So those are good really for wherever you live, especially like Midwest when there are tornadoes. But it's relatively inexpensive, and at least it'll keep you on your toes, because not all of us have our phone on at night. And sometimes those weather alerts don't come through. So that's always something just nice to have. And my final thing of preparation, I do have one extra little bonus one, but just to keep extra gas on hand. You don't need to go out and do, 6 of those 5-gallon things full up every single summer. But if you think it's going to be a storm that's going to be bad that you're going to evacuate for, 1 or 2 extra ones is always good to do. or if it's something that you think you're going to stay or you're not sure if you're going to stay or not, having a couple extras is always good. But really making sure your car is gassed up is really the better option. But my last one is actually having a little tornado shelter in your home. So for me, because we do have nights like this one where we should get some weather radios going off and possible tornadoes. When my kids were littler and it was harder to get them awake and moving, like toddler ages, I set up I had a walk-in closet in our old house that was actually in the middle of the house. So it was the perfect location. I put pillows in there. I had some extra blankets in there. I had an extra leash and a bottle of water and a little bowl for my dog. And then some like juice boxes and stuff, or like formula bottles, like just the packets, just in case we were in there for a while, and a little lantern. And I had like a little tornado shelter ready to go in my walk-in closet. So like nights that I thought it was going to be bad, I would just let them sleep in there, and they thought it was awesome. They thought it was a little slumber party, so they loved it. And then I was, I could sleep a little bit better at night because I knew that they were already safe and secure in there. But during a hurricane coming through, the last time we went through Sally, we actually just had them sleep in there as well, and they were older and they still thought it was fun. So just little glow sticks and stuff, and they thought it was a fun little time. So doing something like that is fun for the kids, and it takes off like the scariness of it all, but it helps you ease your mind because you know your kids are in a safe spot. Okay, so let's now talk about if you're looking for a home here and what are some things to look for so that you are ready for a hurricane. So check your flood zones, check your evacuation zones. They are two different things. So the flood zone is where your house sits on the floodplain, basically. So if you're in a flood zone, make sure you know which one you're in, more so just because of insurance purposes. But make sure you know your evacuation zone, because depending on where you live, and some people don't realize that you don't have to be super close to the water to be in an evacuation zone. So kind of know your zone is what they say, so that you know when you are mandated to leave. Because if you're in an evacuation zone and you stay, there's no guarantee that the emergency people will come to find you. Yes, they'll come eventually, but they're not going to be coming right away because it's probably going to be too dangerous. So just make sure that you know what zone you're in so that you know if you need to leave or not. Plus, because then you can have a backup plan, or at least a plan in place to know, like, oh, if I'm in an evacuation zone that I need to evacuate in a category 4, maybe I can go to my friend's house, like have those things set up. So when you're looking for that property, we kind of already talked a little bit about insurance if you've got window coverings and things like that, but look for those things. Make sure that your home has a newer roof so that you know that the roof has the right tie downs and things like that, that you do have the appropriate window coverings, not just windows like your windows, but the glass on the home. So that you don't have to do it after you close, but basically so that it's already there, and then that way you can start getting that lower insurance already. But knowing those things in advance and just knowing whether you're going to have to do it after you close or not. But the other thing too is asking neighbors when there's big waterfalls where the water sits. If you're in a flood zone X or the 0.2%, which don't require you to have a flood policy, if you have a mortgage, ask it once, either before or after you move in or before or after you go under contract, talk to the neighbors and find out. Say, hey, when it rains here or during Sally, where was the water? Was there any water coming up to this house or to your house or whatever? So that way, like, hey, during a hurricane, even though I'm not in a flood zone, I might have some issues with water. Because if nothing else, you can at least buy that flood policy, because then it's only like a $500 or $600 policy, but you're still protected. So then the other thing to think about when you're purchasing a home here and you're thinking about hurricanes is just knowing what age your house is, and in relation to that, knowing that if it's a newer house, it's the code that it was built to is a little bit more stricter for if it's built in Florida, there are codes in place for hurricanes itself. If it's an older home though, like I always say, it's gone through Dennis, Ivan, Opal, Andrew even, which was a category 3 once it came back over. It's gone through all of those. So if it's still there and it doesn't look like it was completely torn down and redone, or, a good chunk of it was redone, chances are good that you're fine. Always do a home inspection though to make sure and have that safekeeping. But either way, it's just something to think about as well. Again, if it's a newer home, you will have the hurricane shields for your windows. Just make sure that they're in the property still, especially if it's vacant. Look around, make sure, see if they're up in the attic, because at some point someone might have accidentally packed them up and taken them. Ask me how I know. So if you haven't figured it out by now, I am a real estate agent. I know I already mentioned it once, but all of my information is going to be popping up here on the screen. I would love to help you out, whether it's with questions about hurricanes itself or looking for a home that might be better fit for you guys if you're concerned about hurricanes. So reach out to me and I'd love to help you. So should hurricanes stop you from moving to Florida? In my opinion, no. I was a little bit afraid when I first moved here as well because I was used to tornadoes, and I've even lived in California where there's earthquakes, and I just heard, hurricanes are huge and they're destructive. Well, so are tornadoes and so are earthquakes. All of these things are destructive. The saving grace to me is that with hurricanes, once you kind of get to know the pattern and what weather people to follow and who to listen to and who not to listen to, you get tons of notice in advance. And once you go through a couple tropical storms or things like that, or lower grade, lower category hurricanes, you do get a little bit more comfortable with them, if you can get comfortable with them. You see on social media and on the news, all these Floridians and Florida man, like stay until category 5. That's not smart. But you can build up a little bit of a tolerance, if you will, to the storm so that you are, a little bit more prepared and comfortable with what is going to happen or what could happen. I'm not saying that it's not something to worry about, but to me, the benefit of living on the beach, the benefit of having such wonderful people here, and the weather is so nice most of the time, that completely outweighs the small chance of having a very destructive hurricane coming through. So are hurricanes something you need to deal with if you move to Florida? Absolutely you do. We are a little bit more protected in the Panhandle. We don't get them very often, knock on wood, but it is absolutely something that you need to be concerned about, but shouldn't stop you from moving here. Okay, so bonus time. I told you I would give you my go-to weather guy. I love him. I think he's very to the point. He doesn't hype things up. He looks like he's 12, but he's actually not. But he's very knowledgeable. If there's a tornado warning, he will tell you that it's safe to come out, even if the National Weather Service says you're still in a tornado warning, because he's just watching all these patterns and he knows weather. He's not all the hype. So, and when a hurricane starts on the coast of Africa, he is calm and cool and collected. He's not worried until he needs to be worried. So once it gets into the Gulf, that's kind of when you need to start thinking about things, right? And he is definitely one of those weathermen that just tells you how it is. He watches the patterns. He also, so the spaghetti models, which are like, I'm sure you've seen memes and things, but they're little noodle lines that tells you where things are going, and they're all different models. And he'll be like, okay, this year, this one's the more accurate one. This year, this one's more accurate. So he kind of watches all those things and is just really like, he geeks out on it, and it's awesome. So his name is Spinks Megginson. He has an app called Red Zone Weather. Download that app. You can set even alerts in there as well, so that if your area has tornadoes warnings, whatever, you can set it so it'll go off on your phone. But he'll go live whenever there's bad weather, and basically just kind of keep you updated. So especially during hurricane season, like when we had Sally, he was live constantly because we did have tornadoes and things pop up, but he would tell you when, even lightning, like he would pull up maps and just show you all that stuff. So it's Red Zone Weather, and his name is Spinks Megginson. He's actually out of Bruton, but he does the whole Panhandle, not just Alabama. So he's one I really like. All right. So we are at Navarre Beach today. It is, what's today's date? September 26th?
Yeah, 26th.
Yeah. Hurricane Helene is headed towards the Big Bend, and I just wanted to show you guys what it looked like when there's a Cat 4 coming to our neighbors to the east on our beach. So we came out here when Michael came, and it was a lot windier, and you could just taste the salt in the air, and our glasses were all gross when we got back in the car. I'm 100% not trying to make light of any of this, because Tallahassee in that area is going to get just hammered, and it's not going to be fun. So I'm not looking forward to that for our neighbors, but I did want to show you guys what the water looks like here. So let's go check it out.
Whoa.
What? Can you see that? Oh my gosh. Let's go farther down here. There's a surfer out there. Look at those waves over there, Jack.
Whoa.
Something like that. So the pier is closed because it is built as a breakaway. So it should be fine in this storm because we're on the quote-unquote good side of it. But that's why you don't see anybody up there. But there are surfers out in the water. Most of these surfers have an agreement with the lifeguards where a lot of the surfers around here know the lifeguards really well. So they just have an agreement that even though the water is closed, it is double red. And they know that they're putting their own lives in danger, that they're kind of okayed with the lifeguards. Sorry. So the storm, it's only like 2:30. The storm's not supposed to hit till 11. So this is actually mild. I don't know if you can see it very well. I'll see if I can zoom up, but the waves down there are even bigger. And obviously the farther east you go, it's going to get worse. There you go. So I hope you gained some insight and maybe feel a little bit more calmer about hurricanes. If you did, I would love it if you gave me a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to my channel and hit that bell so that you don't miss the next time I drop another video about Navarre and why it's my amazing home.